on this particular game. I've cut it down to like 6 pages, which I'm not going to go over all 6 pages. Warren Sharp's tome is 65 pages long. It's phenomenal reading, though. Highly encourage you to check it out.
Phenomenal, you mean completely extensive ad nauseum.
Well, listen, you got to be. Listen, I will say this: you have to be a diehard football fan to get through all 65 pages for sure. But it's there at Sharp Football on Twitter. He's got the tweet pinned at the top of his page, so you can check it out. I will mention this right off the top before I throw it to Neil here. The 49ers haven't trailed by more than 7 points in the second half in 17 of 18 games this season. They trailed by 11 for 4 minutes and 34 seconds in a 27-24 overtime loss to Seattle in November. I think that's interesting. It's also interesting that Patrick Mahomes has never lost an NFL game by more than 7 points.
Is that you throwing it to me?
Yeah, that was me throwing it to you.
Oh, thanks. I think I just.
Well, I said it before I said the
quite. Yeah. I was just waking up. I mean, what do you want me to say, Jay? I mean, Patrick Mahomes is he's one of those players who I don't know. Has he actually had a bad game in his career yet? He has really. Some okay, pretty good games. Then he has lots of phenomenal games. I'm not sure he's really dipped below sort of pretty good in his career so far. I think yet to really see that. So that's a big test for him. Can I just lay it on the table right now, Jay? I think this game is about two things. It's about, can the San Francisco 49ers defense get a 4-man rush, using a 4-man rush, get pressure on Mahomes, and countering that, can Andy Reid get his renowned screen game going to counteract that pass rush? I think that's going to be the key to the game. Lots of interesting matchups in this game, of course, but for me, that's the key thing to this game. And I'm sure the guys spoke about that in their little preview there. But that's where it comes down to for me.
Well, let's ask Nick. Nick, what do you think about the screen game for the Chiefs? I, for one, don't really think I've seen a lot of screens in the postseason out of them.
There hasn't been a lot, but part of that's just been the way the teams have been playing them. I mean, I think screens are most effective against the blitz. And so, I mean, if they're getting pressure with the 4-man rush, I mean, that still leaves the second-level defenders able to react to the screen. I'm not sure that's going to be the antidote. But, I mean, if they're not getting there with 4-man, and I think that's likely, and they start blitzing guys, then absolutely. Like, you know, Reid has a real thick chunk of his playbook that's all screens and really creative ones as well. So we'll see what they do with that. But, I mean, I agree. I think that's one of the key matchups. You know, you have really top talent all across the line in terms of the defensive line of the 49ers. But the Chiefs' offensive line has been really kind of an unheralded unit. They haven't given up many sacks or pressures. And, like, the next-gen stats that NFL put out, like I have no idea how to calculate this, but they actually calculate them as being like the number one line in terms of probability of giving their quarterback 3 seconds to throw. However they came to that. The other big thing is just that I think, I mean, Mahomes is a big part of that, right? I mean, it's not just the line, it is him. And he is as good as just about anybody at, you know, getting away from the pressure and making something else happen. And he's almost more dangerous, you know, once he's out of the pocket, once he's flushed from the pocket. And they do tons of things just to set up that situation. They don't do like bootleg rollouts with him. They'll do like sprint outs where, like, as soon as he has the ball, he is sprinting to a spot that's like 5 yards away from where the pocket is. So while, you know, they're doing the sumo wrestling one line against the other, it kind of doesn't matter. It's sort of irrelevant to the next 2 seconds of what happens because he's already out of there. And so I don't know. I think the big thing for the 49ers, it's not just getting pressure, it's containing him, getting to the point where he can't escape. And one of the other stats that Warren Sharp had in here that I found interesting, that we were just talking about it during a little break, is, you know, it's not often you see 100% of anything, you know, in terms of like when this happens, 100% of the time it does this. And Mahomes, when scrambling on third down, has a 100% conversion rate. So when he gets out, and if, you know, the rush didn't get to him, and you dropping everybody back in coverage, if he sees the yards, he'll take them, and he gets it 100% of the time. Granted, there hasn't been a ton of those instances, but they've been in key moments.
And averaging 14 yards per carry, or just short of that. James, what is your key takeaways moving into this preview of the game?
If Kansas City do a 2-1, how Kansas, and they both rely on Kansas City. First and foremost, can they slow the rushing attack of the 49ers? We've seen that the 49ers, once they get it going, they don't have a problem doing it over and over and over again, throwing football back basically 75 years to an era before the forward pass was really invented. And two, if the Chiefs go up by double figures early in this game, is Garoppolo capable enough of keeping the 49ers in the game by throwing the football? Briefly to go over some injuries here, there's no one listed on the Chiefs injury report thus far at this point during the week. Nick, I do want to ask you briefly before I move on to the Niners. LaShawn McCoy is apparently being held out of the game again. Is that correct?
I mean, I don't know. He was a surprise healthy scratch from the AFC Championship game. It does seem like they've just decided that to the extent they're ever going to run the ball, it's going to be, it's going to be fourth quarter to run out the game or goal line, and they trust Damian Williams to pass protect better and to take care of the football. So, yeah, I think McCoy may be sitting out again.
All right. On the 49ers side, only three names, two defense, Jaquiski Tart, safety, has rib injuries. He was limited in Wednesday's practice. Quan Alexander, still nursing a pectoral muscle. He was limited in practice. And Tevin Coleman with a separated shoulder he sustained in the NFC Championship game. He is also a limited participant, but all three are expected to be full go come Sunday.
Neil, you had mentioned the pass rush, and one of the things that Warren Sharp is pointing out is that teams that win the sack battle win 80% of all games. 49ers, accustomed to preventing you from converting on third down by pressuring and sacking your quarterback. But as Nick pointed out, Mr. Mahomes is 100% on third down conversions. But you also shared this tweet with us in the Slack group that James Palmer sent out, that teams with more than 55 sacks entering the Super Bowl in the last 15 seasons are all undefeated in the Super Bowl. The 2015 Broncos, the 2011 Giants, the 2010 Packers, the 28 Steelers, the 2007 Giants, and the 2005 Steelers. That 2007 Giants team, I don't remember them in a Super Bowl. I don't know.
That was written off.
Shocking that you wouldn't.
Yeah. Before we head back into that dark alleyway of New England, let's get back to this game, Jay. That's a good stat. I think it's an honest stat. And honestly, I kind of see this game being a little bit similar to the Seattle and Denver matchup. Now, which year was that when Seattle thrashed Denver and it was a big time defense coming up against big time offense?
That was the one before the Patriots beat
2013, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can see shades of that game in here. I don't think Kansas City have played a defense are going to be as good as this 49ers one for a little while. They will get pressure on Mahomes. And let's face it, guys, this is a Super Bowl. It's not just a regular season game that nobody's watching. It's watched around the world. Billions of people will be watching this game, and the pressure of a Super Bowl matchup, you don't know how young players are going to react to that on both sides of the ball, and that also brings a certain amount of uncertainty. But I did say a few weeks ago, Jay, that the Chiefs would make the Super Bowl from the AFC. They're there, but I just think they would have preferred any other team from the NFC than the 49ers. I don't think it's a good matchup against the 49ers. I can see them getting maybe a couple of touchdowns on long passes. So I'm not sure there's a great speed in the secondary for the 49ers, but that pass rush is not going to give Mahomes time. And I think what they will do is they will attempt with Bosa to keep Mahomes in the pocket as much as they can. And this is take the quarterback out with the knees day, isn't it? I mean, nobody cares who wins, how you win the Super Bowl, as long as you win the Super Bowl. And we know Mahomes. We've got Mahomes has got the knee injury he's had, which no doubt he'll need surgery on at some point. Somebody's going to crush that knee in this game because nobody cares. It's winning the Super Bowl.
More stats from Mr. Sharp. On early downs, the 49ers primarily play zone coverage, 50% cover 3, 27% cover 4. It just so happens that Patrick Mahomes dominates cover 3 or 4 on early downs with a 62% success against cover 3 and 69% against cover 4.
Let's just that's a nonsense stat, because Mahomes generally has in his career so far has dominated any coverage. He hasn't really struggled, as far as I can see on the field, against any defense or any coverage. So chuck that one out the window.
Yeah, well,
Mahomes is really good.
The point is if they're playing a bunch of cover 3, Mahomes does better than average.
Yeah, but if I bet you if they play a bunch of man coverage, he does better than average as well. Mahomes is good.
It's clearly not as good as against cover 3 or cover 4. It's not 70% success versus cover 4.
How do you know? Is that in which page of this Warren piece is that
one? By the way, if the 49ers don't sack the quarterback, their third down conversion rank shifts from number 2 all the way to number 15, which would be obviously average.
I have a question for Nick.
So it is a question. It is a whole. You're right. The whole game comes down to if the 49ers can sack Mahomes and if the Chiefs can stop the run, and that does seem to be where the Chiefs excel in Mahomes not getting sacked, and where the 49ers excel in that the Chiefs' weakness is their run defense.
I have a question for Nick.
Go for it.
Is he taking questions today?
Yes, I think
I am.
He is. Okay, good, excellent. Nick,
I'm not just here to not complain.
back in the 80s, of course, you guys are probably all too young to remember, but a certain quarterback came out of Pittsburgh and into the NFL and threw for 4,000 or 5,000 yards, I think his first 3 seasons, very similar to Mahomes has done. And that was a certain Dan Marino, who came into his first season, went straight to the Super Bowl, and probably thought to himself, hey, this is pretty easy, this NFL business. And, of course, never returned to the Super Bowl in his very illustrious career. Are you concerned at all, Nick, that if Mahomes loses a Super Bowl, he may well end up on that same trajectory as Dan Marino?
Not at all, really. I mean, I'm not like a historian of the game like you and James, honestly. Like, I don't know what went wrong with the Dolphins specifically. I mean, Marino was drafted 4 years before I was born, so a little bit before my era in terms of watching the game. But, I mean, it's one of those things where that's sort of the only that's like the only downside comparison in like the history of this game for Patrick Mahomes is what's kind of crazy is that, and by the way, that's also a Hall of Famer. And so it's like, obviously that's not ideal, but would I take it? Another 15 years of a Hall of Fame quarterback in my city? I'll take it.
By the way, everybody, Dan Marino, overrated.
Yeah, back on topic here quickly. Pod, one thing I did see in Sharp's notes, if you want to call them that, I call it his dissertation anthology, was the Niners ineptitude on defense when it comes to opposing teams' play action.
Mm-hmm.
And that their defensive rank plummets from like straight passing or straight run plays, like being top 5, top 3 in each respectively, to like bottom third of the league, when teams do run
like
play
dead
action.
last.
Yeah.
Not even bottom third. It's dead last. Dead last.
I knew it was somewhere down there, but that's probably the one thing that jumped out about me with the Niners defense going into this game. And it's not something that you would actually think of a Super Bowl team. You think they'd be good across the board with how their defense ranked across all situations. At worst, middle of the league, for any kind of scenario that they'd face all season. But dead last was eye-popping.
I wonder how much, Nick, Charly talked about the other side of the defense. We brought this up last week, the battle that Rick Sherman was having with other great corners of history. And I said, I don't care if he only plays one side. Throw at Richard Sherman at your own risk. My guess is Andy Reid knows that and is not going to be throwing towards Richard Sherman, but is going to be targeting the other guys constantly and without fail.